You know what's funny? The whole thing started over $43. I'm sitting on my bunk offshore, middle of my second week on the rig, scrolling through our bank app like I do every few days just to make sure nothing's weird. Now, let me explain our setup. We have completely joint finances, everything's shared. Been that way since we got married 17 years ago. Joint checking, joint savings, joint credit cards where we're both authorized users on each other's accounts. We can both see all transactions from both cards. It's always been transparent between us. Anyway, I'm scrolling through her card activity and there's this charge from this Italian restaurant. Looks like 43 bucks. My wife works night shifts at the hospital. She's an ER nurse and she usually just grabs hospital cafeteria food or brings stuff from home. She's not really a go out to eat alone type of person. Plus, this restaurant is like an hour from our house based on the address. I almost scrolled past it, almost didn't think twice, but something made me look closer. The date was a Saturday night. I'd been offshore. She told me she was working a double shift that weekend because they were short-staffed. I went back through her charges for the past 3 months. I found 4 more restaurants, all between $30 and $70, all on Saturday nights, all when I was working. Could be nothing, right? Maybe she was meeting coworkers after shifts. Maybe she was treating herself. But why an hour away? Why places I'd never heard her mention? I sat there staring at my phone for probably 20 minutes before I did anything else. Listen, I'm not proud of what I did, but I needed to know. I logged into our phone account, both our phones on it, and pulled up the last 3 months of her call logs. There was one number she called constantly, multiple times a day, calls lasting 30, 40 minutes. Lots of late night calls, like 11 p.m., midnight, way more frequent than she called me, and we talked every night when I was offshore. I did not recognize the number. I tried one of those reverse lookup sites online. All it gave me was David W. and the general location in the next county. That's it. No full name, no address, nothing useful. I went back to those restaurant charges and cross-referenced the dates with the call logs. Every single time she went to one of those restaurants, she called that number earlier in the day. Long calls, 20 to 40 minutes, like they were planning something. I sat with this information for 2 days, didn't call her, didn't accuse her of anything, just kept working my shifts and thinking. Part of me wanted to be wrong. Part of me knew I wasn't. When I got home from that rotation, I didn't say anything, just watched, paid attention. She seemed normal, tired from work, happy to see me, asked about the rig. We had dinner, watched TV, fell into our regular routine. But now I was looking for things, and once you start looking, you see stuff, like how she started keeping her phone in her purse instead of leaving it on the counter like she used to. How she stepped outside to take certain calls, saying it was work stuff. She mentioned picking up extra shifts on weekends, but when I looked at our joint checking account, her paychecks were not showing the overtime pay she should have been getting. I had 5 days home before my next rotation. I spent most of them just observing. On day 4, I made a decision. I needed professional help to figure this out. On day 4, I made a decision. I needed professional help to figure this out. I found a divorce attorney through online reviews, looked for someone with good ratings who specialized in family law, made an appointment during the next week offshore. I told my wife the rig needed me for an extra week due to equipment maintenance. It's not unusual. Sometimes rotations get extended for mechanical issues or weather delays. She didn't question it. Instead of going back to the rig, I stayed at a hotel near the docks and met with the attorney. She's been practicing family law for 28 years. Her office was small, but professional. I showed her everything: the credit card bills with the restaurant charges, the phone logs showing the constant calls to that one number, the pattern of it all happening when I was offshore. When I finished laying everything out, she said, "This looks concerning, but here's your problem. Credit card bills and phone logs are circumstantial." She could explain away all of this. I was meeting a friend, it was a work contact, whatever. If you want to file for divorce on grounds of adultery in New York, you need concrete proof of the affair. I asked what that meant. She said, photos, video, documentation of them together in compromising situations. Something undeniable. I asked, how would I get that? She said, you hire a private investigator. They do surveillance, document everything legally, provide a professional report that holds up in court. Then she gave me a name, said he was a former detective and did mostly insurance fraud, but also handled domestic cases. Said he was thorough and expensive, but worth it. I called him that afternoon. I met with the private investigator the next day. He was maybe 60, gray hair. He looked like somebody's grandpa. Not what I expected a PI to look like. I showed him what I had: the phone number that kept appearing, the credit card charges, the patterns. He said, first thing I need to do is identify who this number belongs to. Reverse lookups only give you partial information. I have access to skip tracing databases. They are professional tools that compile information from public records, utility bills, property records, court documents, all legal sources. I can get you a full name and address. I asked how much this would cost. He said, my rate is $125 an hour. Initial identification work will take about 4 hours. Then surveillance depends on what you want me to document. Figure minimum 40 hours of surveillance over multiple weeks to establish a pattern, plus expenses, gas, equipment, report preparation. You're looking at $8,000 to $10,000 total. That was a lot, but I needed to know and I didn't really care. I had the money. I told him to proceed. He said he needed a retainer of $4,000 to start. I paid it right away. 3 days later, he called me, said he had the identification. The phone number belonged to a guy named David, 42 years old. He worked as an X-ray tech, lived in a condo about 35 minutes from our house. The private investigator had pulled all this from public records. Property ownership showed the condo and David and his wife's names. DMV records showed his address. Business databases showed his employer. Now we had a name. Now we could do surveillance. The private investigator worked for the next 6 weeks. I went back offshore for 2 rotations during this time, 3 weeks each, with the week home in between. He followed my wife on 6 different occasions. He also did surveillance on David to confirm his patterns and habits. The first surveillance was at one of those restaurants. The private investigator photographed them meeting in the parking lot entrance that was more than friendly, photographed them through the restaurant window, photographed them in the parking lot afterward, a long kiss before getting into separate cars. Second surveillance was at David's condo. The private investigator documented my wife's car arriving at 7:30 p.m. on a Saturday when David's wife was out of town for work. The PI confirmed this by checking social media. David's wife had posted about a conference in Chicago that weekend. My wife's car stayed until 1:15 a.m. The private investigator photographed her arrival and departure. Third surveillance was at a hotel about 40 minutes away. The private investigator followed them. They clearly planned to meet. He photographed both of them checking in at the front desk, going up the elevator together. Her car stayed in the parking lot overnight. He photographed her leaving at 7 a.m. the next morning. The private investigator did 3 more surveillance operations over the following weeks. Each time, more documentation, different restaurants, David's condo twice more when his wife was traveling, another hotel on a different date. After 6 weeks, The PI compiled everything into a 40-page report, organized by date, every photo labeled with timestamps and locations, GPS coordinates for each location, license plate confirmations, a timeline showing the pattern over 6 weeks. He also included background information on David, confirmed through public records that he was married, property records showing his wife co-owned the condo, business license records showing his employment. Everything was obtained legally through public databases, surveillance in public places, and standard PI techniques. When the PI delivered the report, I sat in my hotel room and went through every page, every photo. There was my wife, clear as day, with someone else. The bill came to $9,400. I paid the balance. That's when it became real. I spent the next month preparing, not rushing into anything, just getting ready. First thing was the living situation. We'd been renting a house month to month for the past 2 years. Original lease had expired, and the landlord was fine with us just continuing monthly since we were good tenants. Now, here's how I handled the apartment situation, because I knew just saying I want to live separately would raise red flags. I started complaining about the commute, not in an obvious way, just mentioning it casually. Man, that drive from the house to the dock staging area is brutal at 4 a.m. I saw an accident on the highway during my commute, reminded me how much I hate that drive. Little things over a couple of weeks. Then I said, you know what I've been thinking? When this lease is up in a few months, maybe I should look for a small place closer to the docks. Not full time, just a crash pad for between rotations. That way I'm not waking you up at 3 a.m. when I leave, and you're not stuck in this house alone, paying full rent when I'm offshore most of the time. She thought about it and said it actually made sense. She'd been talking about maybe moving closer to the hospital anyway, since her commute was also long for night shifts. So it didn't seem like a separation. It seemed like a practical solution for both of us. I found a small studio apartment near the docks, told her about it, said it was cheap and perfect for what I needed. She seemed fine with it. Signed the lease and paid first and last month. Got the keys. Then came the careful part, moving my stuff. But here's the thing. I couldn't move much without it being obvious, so I didn't. I moved the absolute essentials, important documents like birth certificate and passport, a few changes of clothes, my laptop, and some other personal items. Things I could fit in my work duffel bag over 2 trips. I told her I was taking some stuff to the new place to set it up. Everything else, my clothes, my tools, furniture, everything we accumulated over 17 years, I left at the house. I will deal with it after the divorce was filed. Trying to move it all secretly would have been impossible and obvious. While this was happening, my attorney was preparing the divorce filing. She drafted everything, organized all the PI evidence, prepared the paperwork. We filed on a Monday morning. I was already at my studio apartment by then. My wife got served that afternoon at the hospital. The process server went to the ER during the 3 p.m. shift change. That time, when one shift is ending and another is beginning, lots of people around. He confirmed her identity and handed her the papers. She called me about 20 minutes later. I was expecting it. I answered. She's asking what's going on. Why is she being served divorce papers? Is this some kind of mistake? I told her it wasn't a mistake. I knew about the affair. I had evidence. I've already moved to the apartment. There was this long silence. Then she started talking fast, trying to explain. Said it wasn't what I thought, that she could explain everything, that we needed to talk. I told her I'd seen the private investigator's report, the photographs, the surveillance documentation from 6 separate occasions, everything. She went quiet again. Then she started crying. asking where I was, saying we needed to talk in person, saying 17 years meant something. I said 17 years meant something to me too, which is why I did this the right way. Everything was documented. Everything was legal. My attorney would handle it from here. She asked if I was really going through with this. I told her I already had. The papers were filed. I moved out. It was done. Then I hung up. She called back immediately. I didn't answer. She called repeatedly over the next 3 hours. I let every single one go to voicemail. The voicemails evolved to someone sounding like they were absolutely unhinged, angry, and then apologetic. It was ridiculous. Then she panicked. Where I was living, when did I move out? Had I been planning this the whole time? I didn't respond to any of them. My wife hired an attorney within a week. He sent my attorney a letter requesting mediation, said my wife wanted to save the marriage, that they should try counseling, that affairs happen and marriages can survive with proper therapy. My attorney wrote back declining mediation, said we were proceeding with the divorce as filed on grounds of adultery. The discovery process started. This is where both sides request documents and information. It's all legal and above board. Both attorneys ask for stuff. Both sides have to provide it. Both parties get notified of every request. Her attorney requested our financial records. My attorney requested my wife's phone records. My wife had to sign authorization for her carrier to release them as part of the discovery process. Her attorney fought it initially, said it was invasive. My attorney filed a motion with the court. The judge approved it since we were filing on the grounds of adultery, and the phone records were relevant to proving the affair. Once we got those records officially through discovery, they showed everything. Daily calls to David's number, hundreds of texts back and forth, calls at all hours, especially late at night. My wife's credit card statements came through discovery too. Both sides had to disclose all financial records. There were more restaurant charges I hadn't even noticed, 2 more hotels on dates I hadn't known about, shopping trips to a mall near David's condo. With everything laid out in discovery, there was no denying what had happened. My wife's attorney tried a different approach. He filed a motion arguing that while the affair occurred, it shouldn't impact the divorce settlement. Said New York was a no-fault state. Most people filed that way. Why make this adversarial? My attorney countered that fault matters for spousal support determination. Under New York law, a judge can consider marital fault when awarding maintenance. We had clear, documented evidence of adultery, including documented times of my wife bringing David to our marital home. That part came from the private investigator's surveillance. On one occasion, he followed my wife from the hospital straight to our rental house. About 20 minutes later, David's car pulled up. The PI photographed both vehicles in the driveway. Lights went on in the house. David's car stayed for 4 hours before he left around midnight. She brought him into our home while I was offshore working. The divorce took about 11 months total from filing to finalization. That's pretty normal for fault-based cases in New York, especially when there's contested discovery and motions. During those 11 months, I just kept working. 3 weeks offshore, 1 week at my studio apartment. The routine was the same, just everything else was different. My wife tried contacting me through other people several times. She called my sister. My sister called me first to ask what was going on. I told her the truth, showed her some of the PI photos on my phone. My sister was furious on my behalf. When my wife called her, my sister told her exactly what she thought of the situation and said to stop calling family members. My wife called my mom. My mom's response was shorter and less polite, said she didn't raise her son to be treated like that, and my wife should be ashamed. My now ex-wife even tried calling the rig company's main office number. She must have Googled it. She asked them to transfer her to me, said it was an emergency. The receptionist told her they don't transfer personal calls to offshore personnel, except in cases of verified family emergencies like a death or hospitalizations. My ex-wife said it was an emergency. The receptionist asked if someone had died or been hospitalized. She said no, but it was urgent. The receptionist said that wasn't their kind of emergency and couldn't transfer her. After about 3 months, my wife stopped trying to contact me directly or through others. The court date finally came in October, 11 months after filing. We both had to appear in person. We sat at separate tables with our attorneys. The judge had reviewed all the case files in advance. That's standard procedure. They usually don't read everything during the hearing. They review it beforehand and come in with preliminary decisions already made. Our case was heard at 10 a.m. The hearing took about 45 minutes. The judge confirmed both our identities, confirmed we both reviewed all the evidence submitted during discovery, asked if there were any remaining factual disputes about the evidence. My ex-wife's attorney stood up and said there were no factual disputes about the affair, but he wanted to argue that it should impact the settlement, especially spousal support. My attorney stood up and said that under New York Domestic Relations Law, Section 236, the court is permitted to consider the marital conduct of both parties when determining maintenance awards, and that the documented affair, including bringing the paramour into the marital home, demonstrated clear disrespect for the marriage. The judge asked my wife directly if she acknowledged having an extramarital affair with the individual identified as David in the private investigator's report. My wife said yes. The judge asked if she acknowledged bringing this individual to the marital residence on at least one documented occasion. My wife said yes. The judge asked if there were any children involved in the marriage. Both attorneys said no. The judge asked if there was any jointly owned real property. Both attorneys said no. We were renters with no property ownership. Then the judge went through the asset division. Joint checking and savings accounts split 50-50. We each keep our own vehicles. I keep my retirement account that I had since before the marriage. She keeps hers from her years of nursing work. I keep my tools and work equipment. She keeps her personal belongings. Regarding the rental house, the judge ordered that I had 30 days to retrieve any remaining personal belongings with the sheriff present to keep the peace. After 30 days, anything remaining would be considered abandoned property. Then came the spousal support determination. The judge noted that this was a 17-year marriage, which would normally warrant spousal support consideration. However, given the documented adultery and particularly the bringing of the extramarital partner into the marital home on multiple occasions, and considering that both parties had maintained separate employment throughout the marriage with similar income levels, we submitted pay stubs showing my rig work salary and her nursing salary were comparable. The court was declining to award spousal support to either party. My wife's attorney tried to object. The judge shut it down, said the decision was made and was within the court's discretion under New York law. Then the judge granted the divorce. 17 years over. The whole hearing was about 45 minutes from start to finish. It's been about 9 months since the divorce finalized. Almost 2 years since I first saw that credit card charge that started everything. My wife moved to Albany about 2 months after the divorce. Heard through my sister that she got a job at a hospital up there. I don't know what happened to her affair partner. My sister mentioned she heard his wife divorced him too, but I don't know any details. Not my business. I'm still working the rigs, still living in that studio apartment near the docks. It's small, but it's enough. Bed, small kitchen, small dining room, bathroom, and enough space for my TV and Xbox. Everything I need. Some days are harder than others. I think about those 17 years, all the memories, all the time we spent together. I wonder how much of it was real and how much of it was me not just seeing what was right in front of me, but mostly I just feel lighter, like I'm not carrying something heavy anymore. Sometimes I wonder if I handled it the right way. The private investigator, the surveillance, the strategic approach instead of just confronting her immediately when I first noticed the charges. I think I handled it the right way. Here's why. If I confronted her right away with just credit card bills and phone logs, she would have had explanations ready. He's a work contact. We were discussing hospital stuff. Those were business dinners. You're being paranoid and jealous. And part of me, the part that had trusted her for 17 years, might have believed her, or at least wanted to believe her enough that I'd have given her the benefit of the doubt. Then 6 months later or a year later, I would have found more evidence, and we would have gone through the same thing again, except I would have wasted more time and felt even more stupid by hiring the PI, by documenting everything properly, by gathering evidence that was undeniable, surveillance photos, timestamps, multiple occasions, a 40-page report compiled by a licensed private investigator. I didn't give her room to manipulate the situation. She could not sidestep the proof. No amount of explaining or crying or promising to change could erase those photographs. That's not revenge. That's just protecting yourself and making sure you have what you need for court. I spent over $9,000 on that PI, worth every penny. That evidence saved me from years of potential spousal support payments. The judge specifically cited the documented affair when denying her maintenance request. So yeah, it was expensive, but it was an investment in getting out cleanly and legally. I keep the PI report in a file in my desk drawer. Don't look at it often, but I keep it as a reminder. Trust but verify. Actions matter more than words. The divorce broke something in me, yeah. Broke the version of me that assumed people were telling me the truth just because we were married. Broke the naive part that thought 17 years of history was some kind of shield against betrayal. But it also taught me something important. You can survive this. You can rebuild. You can start over at 50 years old and actually be okay. I'm not bitter anymore. I was for a long while, angry and hurt, and feeling like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. But now I'm just moving forward. I've got my work, got my small apartment, got a woman I'm getting to know who seems genuine, got my health and my ability to support myself. That's enough. One day at a time, one rotation at a time. And honestly, I'm okay with that.